Hey, it's Jason with Threefold Solutions, and today I wanted to take a deeper dive into planning center automations. Now, specifically, I'm going to look at people and some of the automations we can do within people today, but I wanted to show you some of the ways that you can go a little bit further and start to find efficiency and optimize some of the ways that we're updating people's information, especially on their profiles. Now, before we jump into that, I always like to mention we make these videos all the time for people who like to use Planning Center and want to go a little bit further with it. And that's why we love doing it. We love to help people with Planning Center. So if you'd give us a quick like on this video and subscribe if you like this type of content, we'll make sure to keep cranking it out so you can always find a tip or trick to use Planning Center a little bit better. All right, let's jump into this video and take a look at how to use some of the advanced features of automations. All right, we're going to jump in here and take a look at people. I'm currently looking at the lists area, and that's where we're going to start off. There's a lot of ways to utilize lists and combine that with automations. Now, a couple of these might have some prerequisites, and I'll explain that. But one of the things I want to look at first is just simply automating a baptism date onto somebody's profile. Seems pretty simple. Many times we can do this and we can just basically update that manually after we have a baptism. But what if you actually pair this with a check-in? And that's the key to this particular automation. If you have a baptism on Sunday, and when people show up for our baptism, we're going to have them check in to a check-in event that we've created in Planning Center check-ins. And then by doing that, we now have the ability to come back and use a list that's watching that check-in. And every time somebody checks into that, the list will refresh and it will write some information such as the date to their profile. Now, the way that this works is by going over to check-in. So I've got that pulled up here as well. And I just want to show you, I've got an event that's already created. And I'm not going to go into a lot of detail about how to set up check-ins today, but just suffice it to say you will need a check-in event for this baptism. I'm going to basically create a weekly baptism event that just reoccurs on the same Sunday every week. You can set it up however you'd like, but when we have baptisms, we usually do it on Sunday at a specific time. You may have several times. You might have 9 and 11. I just have it at 9 a.m., so that's the way I've kind of set this up. But the idea with this is to have a place for people to show up on the date that they're going to be baptized and either check them in on their behalf, you do it for them, or have them just check in real quick on an iPad station or even a phone if somebody wants to open that up. The key is we need to use the check-in as a bit of a trigger. So once we've done that, we're then going to go over to people and we're going to build a list. And in that list, we're basically going to look for anyone checking in to this baptism. So I've got one here. It's called Automation Baptism Date. And under the rules, you'll see it's very basic. So I'm just simply saying I'm using a check-in rule. The condition information is in attendance. And then basically I'm just looking for attended. And then of course you have to look for your check-in event. In this case, it's baptism. And then I'm just simply saying any location, anytime. If you wanted to be specific, you could be here. Now I'm saying since 1 day ago. You might not necessarily have to do 1 day ago. You might say since 7 days ago, or you might just say ever, if they've ever checked in any number of times, and keep it very simple. But if you want it to be specific, you could also do that. Now, the idea here is to also include guests and regulars just in case somebody accidentally gets marked as a guest or a regular. And then the idea is to run it. Once you run this list, you'll have some results. And anybody who's checked into the event itself will now show up on your list. And once you've got results in your list, you can then use an automation to write information to their profile. Now, the way that I've got this set is to update a custom field. So let's take a look at that. Even though I've got the card here, I'm going to go ahead and create automation. And I'm going to say when a person is added to this list, then perform an action, and this is profile information, so I'm going to do it in people, so I'll choose people. And then I'm going to go down to the bottom, and it's going to give me a chance to update a field. I'm going to have one already set up, so this is another prerequisite. If you haven't created a custom field and a place for this to live, that is something that you'll need to do. So keep that in mind. We have to have a place to update in order for this information to live, or this date. So in this case, I'm going to go look under important dates and I'm going to go look for, I'm going to actually choose the second menu and look for baptism date or baptism. In this case, I am now going to choose when or how this information will be written. Now, this is something that's a little bit new. Planning Center has just recently tweaked this. So pay attention here to day automation runs or day before automation runs. Now, the reason I'm going to choose day before automation runs is because Planning Center automations generally run at 2 a.m. every single night. If they're running at 2 a.m., it's generally the next day. So if your baptism happened on Sunday, if you chose the day the automation runs, then that's 2 a.m. on Monday. So really what we want to write is the day before because that's actually when you want the date to be recorded. This has been a little bit of a problem in the past where things were skewed by just one day. Not anymore. Now with this update, you can now choose day before automation runs and it will write that date for the Sunday baptism into the field as Sunday rather than Monday. So just so you know, we're choosing day before automation runs. Go ahead and click Create Automation. And now you will see that day before automation runs is now going to be the date that it now writes to that field. Now, I talked about a custom field, and just to show you how that works, you have to go to People. So click on the People menu in People and look for the little sprocket. And then I want you to go down to the Customize Fields area, and I've got a bunch of custom tabs here, but I'm going to show you the one under Important Dates. It's right here. I've created this field. It's where it's going to live. If you click on the pencil, you can see it's a date type of field. There are lots of different types of fields here, but ours is a date field, so we can record a date into this field. You'll need to set this up ahead of time, and this would be the same for any of the automations that we're looking at today. So make sure you've got that set up. Now, while I'm here, I'm going to mention that I've got a couple others. I've got another one called Growth Track. Now, I just want to mention here that I can have a start date, an end date, or I could literally look at classes taken, growth path, individual classes. I can use this in many different ways. But again, I am going to start down this path with a list and an automation, but it is paired again, in this instance, with a check-in. So once again, in check-ins, you may need to have, for example, an event set up that's always open. Even though you may have a registration sign up, that's okay. It doesn't have to be, what we call a checkistration where you've moved it over. It can be, but if it's something that's going to occur on a regular basis, let's say you have a growth track class every single month and it's on Saturday, this is a great way for you to be able to continue an ongoing situation with an event and not have to change your list and automation all of the time by updating it for a checkistration, which is part registration, part check-in. In this situation, you can now just have this open event that's always there. Some weeks it's empty, nothing's happening. And then on the weeks that people check in, we're actually going to be watching for that in a list. So let's take a look at how we'd set that one up. Okay, let's go ahead and take a look at people and lists again. Now, I'm going to take a look here at just building this one to show you how I might create it. So first off, I'm just going to make a new list. So I'm going to add a rule, and I'm actually going to change this to check-ins again. And we're going to go look for an attendance, and then we're going to go attended. And then the next thing we're going to look for is a particular event. And so I'm looking for growth track, class number 1. That's the check-in event that I'm watching. Now, I don't care about locations. I just have one. The time, again, I just have one meeting time. I don't care. Now, if you have multiples, you have to take that into consideration. But in this particular instance, it's ever any number of times because I expect people to only check into this one time. Now, again, I'm including regulars and guests, and I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to save this and run this list real quick. Now, I may not have anybody in there right now, but the idea is I can now build out the automation. Now I'm going to do the exact same thing again. So I'm going to create the automation and I'm going to do a similar type of advanced automation here where anytime somebody checks in, so anytime somebody's added to this list or checks into the event, I'm going to go to people again and I'm going to go look for that custom field. And now I'm going to go to my growth track area and I'm actually going to update Growth Path 101. And the value again is either going to be yes or no for me. But remember, I'm just looking for a completion. So in this particular instance, I want to know that you've completed the class. Now, many times you may have a registration or a sign up, and people sign up to attend a particular event or class. The idea behind this is that's really not a verification that they were there. The check-in kind of tells the truth that you actually showed up. That's why I like to pair this with a check-in that's kind of open-ended and always running. And the idea behind this is I need to know that you checked in as a way to say you were there, you attended the class, and thus you've completed it. Some people also want to know the date that you were there. If that's the case, when you make your custom field, choose a date field again. If you just simply need to know that they've completed it to show, yes, class 1, class 2, class 3 are all completed, then you can just do yes or no. In my situation, I'm going to do yes, just to show that they were there. So I'm going to go ahead and create that automation, and I'm going to go ahead and now just have that sitting there in the background. Now, I like to follow a couple rules when I create automations. You may or may not do this, but I just think it's a best practice. Sometimes I like to have a category set up for automations. That way, when I'm looking at my list, and again, I'm going to auto refresh this. So keep that in mind. You need to auto refresh this. I'm just going to go ahead and do it nightly. You could do this weekly if you want to. But as I said before, this list will refresh automatically every night at 2 a.m. Now, I'm not writing a date here. So in this particular instance, I'm not so concerned about whether it's writing the day of or the day before. But in this case, I just need to know that you were there. I see that you attended, and I write yes to that field on your profile. What we're doing here is we're looking for ways to track engagement, and we're looking to use automations so we don't have to come back later and manually update every person individually on their profile and mark them off. There are probably other ways to do that with a list and maybe a bulk action, but the truth is this just simply sits in the background. It's running, it's watching for something to happen, and when something is added to your list, it triggers the automation. The automation then writes the date or the information to the profile field in those custom fields that we've created. So that's just a couple ways that you can utilize advanced automations. Now, don't forget, today we're just simply talking about an event inside of a check-in where we can trigger something happening. So the list is actually just watching the check-in event, which is our trigger. And when somebody checks in there, it's going to update their information automatically. Now, I like to name these things as well. So make sure when you're building these, I've got one here. It just says automation, baptism date. It's called automations from the category side of things. I like to keep these things clear so myself and anybody else who helps maintain and monitor these things can just simply pull up all automations, make sure they're still intact, they're still doing what they're supposed to be doing. I like to keep an eye on them. I don't like to set things and just, let them do their thing and then come back a year and find out they haven't been running. Although if that does happen and you're the creator of the automation, the system will notify you anytime there's a hiccup with anything. And just so you know, when we're talking about automations and we look at those automation cards that we've created, you can click on the 3 dots here and you can look at the history. And the history will actually tell you if there's ever been a failure, if there's ever been a skipped or paused instance, and it'll also tell you every time it's been successful. So you do have a full history of how many times this automation has run. And like I said, if you're the person who has created this automation, if there ever is a hiccup, it will send you an email to alert you about that. So that's another way to keep up to date with the maintenance side of having these automations running in the background. Now, don't forget, there are automations everywhere. Sometimes we use automations in things like registrations, and I've seen these used in so many different ways. But one of the other ways that I like to actually look at this is sometimes you may have, and I'm just going to grab anything here. I've got a bunch of different sample ones, but we've got a baptism registration. We've also got a couple other things, a connections class, all that to say, I want you to see that there are automations in other places. You will find automations all over the place, in groups, in services, inside of registrations. And sometimes you can use an automation in your registration to kind of move things along. Many times people tend to have maybe a group, and sometimes it's student groups or kids groups where maybe there's a fee. And sometimes you have to have a registration or sign up for people to make a payment And then you can move them over into a pre-set up group over on the group side of things. So just as an example, maybe I'm looking to have a parent sign up for a particular event so their kids can attend a kids group. And so basically there's a $15 fee for them to have supplies. And basically you have to go through registrations to take a payment. So we'll go ahead and set that sign up inside of registrations. And then when somebody registers, and this is where you can use these automations, inside of registrations, we can say if the person is the registration contact, or if the person is an attendee, or if there's an actual assignment or a selection type. There's many other choices that you can use here, but the idea would then be to take the action in wherever the destination would be. So in this case, it would be groups. And so here we could say add to group. And in this particular instance, I'm going to go look for whatever group I'd like to add them to. And I might have a student group like 6th grade boys. And then basically I can just select the role as member. And you could notify the person if you need to say you've now been added to this group, but you don't have to. And the idea is they make the payment, they register or sign up in registrations, and then the automation goes ahead and adds them into the group for you. So that's just another way that you can utilize automations. They're everywhere. There are all kinds of places that you can go deeper with automations and simplify some of the work that you're doing inside a planning center. That's just a couple tips to kind of get you started, but watch for the automations. Think about your process. Think about the way that your process runs and how many times are you doing something manually that maybe planning center automations can do for you. So that's a good tip for you to remember and find more efficiency inside a planning center using automations. Check to see wherever you're doing something manually, there may be an automation to help you with it. That's enough for today. I just wanted to give you a quick overview on using automations a little bit further and going deeper with them. I hope you got something out of that today. We'll see you on the next video.